It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.
It's live despite the time differences, and it is big tonight. This is the mother of all talk shows with the mother of all interviews, Professor David Miller and Professor Jeffrey Sachs, and, well, ill-educated me in the chair. The United States has gone from tragedy to farce. The whole world is laughing at President Donald Trump as he gets on to Air Force One with his new Benjamin Buffon. And Israel is taking a tanking in soft power everywhere. But no one quite expected it in the English courts. And it's all happening on the Ukrainian front also. You don't want to miss any of this. Not 1 minute of it. It's the mother of all talk shows. Stay tuned. People used to fear the United States. People used to hate the United States. I spent my entire life shaking my fist at the camera saying no more US wars. The US actually doesn't want to be in the war in Ukraine anymore. That's the Social Democrats and Liberals and the Pink Brigade that are so gung-ho for that. But Donald Trump has, against all judgment, all sanity, taken them into an unwinnable war in the Persian Gulf, and everybody knows it. Everybody in the United States knows it. In fact, the United States have a saying for it. Donald Trump is behind the 8-ball. Now, I'm a snooker player rather than pool. I've no idea what the 8-ball even is, but I know if you're behind it, you are in a jam. And Trump is in that jam right now, between a rock and a hard place, and the rock ain't Mount Rushmore. The rock is the destruction of the Republican Party in just a few months' time in the midterm elections. If the Democrats, who be no better, win the House of Representatives and the Senate, Trump will be being impeached every single week. Now, of course, there's a difference between being impeached and being convicted, but it only needs a 2/3 majority in the Senate to convict the president. And as each drop in the opinion polls, as each drubbing in elections begins to dawn on the remaining Republican senators that this man is leading the party to destruction, don't bet against that 2/3 majority being achieved. And if it's achieved, if Trump is convicted, then he is in the mother of all difficulties, because no pardons will be possible. J.D. Vance, who would by default become president of the United States, could not possibly pardon the Trump gang. He might have to pretend he's going to, but something will come up on the way to the studio. The auto pen won't work. Something will happen, because J.D. Vance would be signing his own political death warrant by pardoning an impeached and convicted President Donald Trump. And if the President Trump is brought down and convicted, what about his extended family? And boy, is it an extended family. Gianni Infantino of FIFA was trying to sell the World Cup to a Kushner, and not even the Kushner you thought. That Kushner has a brother who's also on the make, on the take, and Infantino was going to sell the democratic, cultural treasure of the whole world. The game of football, not soccer, guys, doesn't exist. It's a bit like pool, if you get my drift. Football belongs to the world, and they were getting ready to sell it at vast profit for Infantino and one or two other plutocrats, maybe even Donald Trump himself, to another Kushner. So my point is, the crime family is quite a big one. I don't know how big the Genoveses are. I don't know how big the Gambinos are. But I know the Trump crime family is quite a number of people. Anyway, back to my point. The United States, having gotten into this war and unable to win it and unable to get out of it, is trapped in a vice, which is now obviously going to run all the way up to November and beyond. Look on it as a kind of October surprise dawning. The Iranians may well offer a deal to an incoming new American administration that they are definitely not going to agree to with you in charge. After all, you killed so many of them. You killed so many schoolgirls. Who can forgive that? I mean, ask yourself, if somebody killed 160 little girls in your local primary school, how could you possibly forgive them? Let alone sit down, talk to them, and broker an agreement that will make them happy. Iranian people are not like that. They don't mind sacrificing themselves for what they believe in and for their country. That much should be evident by now. If it isn't, you weren't watching the videos of Arba'in in Karbala, the annual commemoration of the martyrdom of the Imams. The martyrdom of Imam Hussein, the martyrdom of his son Ali, are absolute cornerstones of the Shia Muslim faith. And when you're fighting an adversary who earnestly believes, trust me they do, who earnestly believes that they will go to heaven in the bloodied rags they were standing in when you murdered them, that they will go to paradise, they earnestly believe that. That's a very difficult adversary to face. Especially when the guys on the Abraham Lincoln are stinking Yeah, stinking. They've been at sea for almost 300 days. They haven't seen a woman for 300 days. You get me? They haven't been ashore for 300 days. They've been eating meager, lousy rations for 300 days. They've been looking at each other's faces for 300 days. They've been smelling each other's armpits for 300 days. Because quite often the shower don't work. Quite often the lavatories don't flush. You feel me? The United States Armed Forces are in a state of near mutiny, and they're led by a madman, as the recently departed chief of the Admiralty in the United States famously opined. I better get back to my point. The United States has now become a laughingstock. It was once feared. It was definitely once hated by people like me. Now we're laughing. We feared Richard Nixon. We feared Lyndon Johnson. He killed so many of the children that were important to us in Vietnam and elsewhere. He murdered so many people. They murdered so many people. And notwithstanding that it was a bipolar world then, the Soviet Union and the United States, we feared their power. Nobody fears Donald Trump. You get me? The Lego brigade of explosive media, the reduction of United States politics to little Lego men, brilliantly devised by the Iranians, the most successful soft power development in recent years. Everybody's laughing at them. And then Trump, who quite obviously is visibly, physically decaying, and for those downwind of him, he's decaying all right, suddenly sprouted big hair. I mean, it was kind of motorbike streaming in the wind. It was Easy Rider hair that he was sporting. There it is. He went from a guy who looked like he had alopecia, whose hair was falling out. He turned into a matinee idol with the swift stroke of a brush. Everybody started. And I myself, I got 10 million views this week just on hairdo gags. If I got 10 million, imagine how many billions there were of views across the world. We're all laughing at you, Donny. And as Vinny the Chin could probably have told you, maybe did tell you, once they're laughing at you, it's kind of the end. And that is undoubtedly what we're looking at now, the end of American power. And that presages so many other things. The Chancellor of Germany, for example, Merz. Now, I'm going to be tough on the Germans this evening for reasons which will become clear. But when Chancellor Merz reaches 13 points, 13% in the public approval rating, it's over for Merz. It's over. You cannot possibly retain office, let alone make war, with 13% approval rating. And this is a direct consequence of Germany, not under Merz, under little soldier Schulz, joining Biden's war against Russia, thinking it could be won. And now that it hasn't been won, now that it isn't going to be won, then one after another, the leaders that plunged their countries into economic disaster for Biden's wars is themselves going to have to take a walk along that short plank and into the depths and disappearance from public and political view. Starmer was the first, about whom more in a minute, but Merz is undoubtedly going to be the second. In fact, I predict that in the month of August, Chancellor Merz will be no more. Now, just like in Britain, that doesn't mean the next guy will be any better. Might even be worse if that is imaginable. But the fact that these Western countries are feeling the need to overthrow their leaders in order to save their own political bacon is a measure of the collapse in the authority, the collapse in the credibility, not to mention the collapse in the popularity of the United States of America. We'll be talking particularly to Professor Sachs about what all that means for the future of the world later in the show. But back to Starmer. I kick myself for not knowing this or not working this out. I can only pray in mitigation, my absence from the country, my absence from Parliament now for 2 years nearly. I've been out of Parliament. Actually, exactly 2 years I've been out of Parliament. If I had been in Parliament, or even if I had been in the country, I might have smelt this sooner than I did. And I'm grateful to a man I know of, but scarcely know, called Steve Howell, who is a journalist of some note, a journalist with quite a political pedigree, last seen as the deputy head of communications of the Jeremy Corbyn administration under Seamus Milne. He's published a piece today called A Very British Coup, in which he describes how the deep state removed Keir Starmer. I was so deliriously happy at the demise of Starmer, I didn't pay enough attention to the choreography of the whole thing. The deep state, the intelligence agencies, the senior officials, the military top brass for the first time in modern times, orchestrated and organized the removal of the British Prime Minister and his replacement by someone who had promised to do the bidding of these agencies and to pony up the money that Starmer was resisting for the defence budgets. I saw all happening and commented on it all happening as it happened, but I didn't join it up. I didn't join the dots. I didn't read the joined up writing. I did think it was funny when the mouse that roared, little John Healy, an inky-fingered clerk, began roaring like a bull at his boss about the size of the defence budget. When I knew John Healy, he wouldn't say boo to a goose. But here he was, in public, challenging his boss over the military and defence budgets. Then, his big Stumer, big Palooka, a Scotsman representing Birmingham, I've forgotten his name already, a big idiot, started writing on social media as the Deputy Defence Secretary, directly challenging his leader over the size of the defence budgets. Then, raised from the grave, Lord George Robertson, whom I've known since he was a boy soldier, though unlike me, he failed his part 1 where I passed it. George Robertson, later the head of NATO, weighed in as a defence advisor to the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, saying that the current level of defence expenditure in Britain was completely unacceptable. And Britain could not be defended on that money. When that we couldn't be defended by an ever-expanding welfare bill. I missed the ever-expanding welfare bill, as it happens. But I should have put these things together, because it turns out, according to Howell, in this excellent piece today, Starmer was refusing to spend even more money on war and weapons than he had already agreed to do. And the military itself and the intelligence agencies themselves then coordinated the removal of Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and only when they had secured a patsy called Burnham to be his replacement. And sure enough, Burnham immediately made clear that he knew on which side his bread was buttered, and promised the military, the intelligence services, everything that they asked for. Maybe more of that later. But the Israeli soft power has taken one hell of a beating. I mean, nobody wants to know them. Nobody wants to admit that they are a friend of Israel. Nobody wants to declare any longer their membership of the conservative, liberal, Labour, Reform friends of Israel. They're keeping the lists a secret now. But one man, a Scotsman like me, Professor David Miller, has just dealt the Israeli soft power in Britain a potentially fatal blow. Professor Miller, an esteemed professor and educator, was sacked from his job at Bristol University, not Southampton, as I earnestly said on Wednesday, for being an anti-Zionist. Professor Miller went to court to establish that it's perfectly legal, it's perfectly able to be fitted into the democratic framework paradigm in Britain to be an anti-Zionist. Some of the greatest Jews in history, like Professor Einstein himself, were anti-Zionist. And he won his case. And we all celebrated, but we were premature, because Bristol University decided to appeal. And last week, Professor Miller won again. And it is now an article of faith in Britain. It is now in the canon of British law that you cannot be discriminated against because you are an anti-Zionist. Sing hallelujah! You can, because coming up right now is the said Professor David Miller. Stay tuned. You're pushing an open door with me on that. My contempt for the United Nations is bottomless. I doubt that Mamdani had the authority to conduct an arrest, given the diplomatic immunity enjoyed by heads of government at the United Nations itself. But you may be right. I didn't know about the New York Philharmonic story. I had no idea that my late friend, President Arafat, was treated in such a disgraceful way I'll read up on it more after the show. And all I'm saying is, Mamdani is trying to win over the American people to what is a radically different set of perspectives, a radically different narrative to that which they've been force-fed by the Uni Party over half a century and more, since the Second World War, in fact. And he deserves some credit for that. He is a very good persuader. He's persuaded the majority of New York's Jewish community to support him rather than Netanyahu. So there's a loud clack, but it is a minority clack that is on his case.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Here's the poll tonight. Is criticizing Israel anti-Semitic? Yes or no? Very clear binary, and 30,000 people have voted already, and I'm on it now announcing it. You can vote on my Telegram channel, t.me/George Galloway. You can vote on my X. You can vote on the YouTube community poll, the YouTube stream. If you're watching on the YouTube stream, please subscribe to the channel, and on patreon.com/George Galloway. If you want to call the show, it's toll free in the United States and Canada. +1 855 50 MOATS, MOATS, or 855 50 66287. It's free of charge in Britain and Ireland. 0800 229 4411. And the worldwide number is 0044 203 966 2625. Now, Professor Miller is the producer of Palestine Declassified. He's an author and a political commentator. And soon, I hope, reinstated to your job, Professor Miller, as the esteemed politics professor at Bristol University. Congratulations to you. And I know I speak for the whole worldwide audience on that. Tell us how it feels to be vindicated at last.
Well, I'm delighted. I mean, we knew we had a strong case. It looked like they were going to lose, but it was 9 months we waited before the judgment came out, which is a really, really long time, longer than any other case this year, I think. So absolutely delighted, overwhelmed by the support from everyone who's stood with me, who's funded my legal fees, which of course have been astronomical, having to fight through 2 cases. But yeah, I'm delighted and relieved, and I'm looking forward, as you say, to returning to the University of Bristol to take up my chair.
Will they take you back? Can they refuse to take you back? I suppose they could make you an offer you couldn't refuse of a very large sum to fund your research forevermore. I might be interested in helping you negotiate that.
Well, yeah, there's going to be a hearing. It's called a remedies hearing, where the judge will determine what the compensation will be and whether they are required to take me back. I understand that if they are required to take me back, that it's very difficult for them to refuse, but it's not unheard of. So we'll see what happens with the court case, which will be upcoming in Bristol, I guess, in a few months' time. And I'm hoping to go back to Bristol, because the key thing is that this was a career-ending job loss. It wasn't just that they sacked me from a job and I could go off to another job. It was the case that I was will be unable to ever get an academic job in the UK ever again until well beyond retirement age. So this is a career-ending loss for me, and I want it to be shown by the University of Bristol that I am a perfectly legitimate person to be a professor of sociology, having been one for 20 odd years, and that therefore I can take up my job and recommence my career.
Amen. And you're a Scotsman, so you'll drive a hard bargain. As I say, as a fellow Scotsman, I'm happy to help you on that. Explain to the audience what being an anti-Zionist actually means.
Well, so I put this in a detailed statement to the court, the original tribunal, back in October 2023, just after the launch of Al-Aqsa Flood. Thought at the time by some to be an inauspicious moment for me to launch this claim that Zionism is an ideology which sees the creation of a Jewish state in the historic territory of Palestine as being legitimate, and an anti-Zionist, of course, sees that as illegitimate, sees it as fundamentally and always racist, as colonial and as imperialist. We put all of that in the judgment, and some people at the time thought this was a little bit radical, and we could have had a less radical anti-Zionist position. But actually, it's a very, very basic position. If you create a state for one group of people and throw out 3/4 of the people who are already there, that's by definition always is going to be racist. And of course, it was from the beginning. And we've established that the idea that it's racist, that Zionism is fundamentally racist, is legitimate, and to use the terms in the legal framework, is worthy of respect in a democratic society. So what we found in the court in the cross-examination of the university's witnesses was that even the most senior witness of the university was forced into a position of saying, yes, it looks like Zionism is racist. So even the enemies thought that, and of course by that stage, when the university was effectively admitting I was right, they had lost the case.
Yes, I can see why. I'll come to the wider issues of liberty in a minute, but just to press you on the ontology of all of this. Clearly, I mean, a blind man could see that a group of European settlers going all the way to the Levant and stealing an entire country from an entire people who were already living there is not just unjust, but it's racist and colonialist and all the rest. But what if, for example, the victorious powers at the end of the Second World War had said, we're going to create a Jewish state in Germany, which would have been a logical and indeed, you might think, entirely correct or appropriate decision to make. We're going to have a Jewish state in Germany, and the Germans will suffer the loss of that territory forevermore. Would that still be Zionism? And if it was, would you still be anti it?
Well, it would depend how it was worked out in practice. I mean, if there were no Germans there, then you might have some kind of argument. But if there were Germans there who were denied rights in a systematic way, and that the Palestinians have been, then it would still be racist. It would still be problematic. The idea of a state for Jews is, of course, not in itself problematic, but the idea of a state for Jews in which Jews have systematically more superior rights is problematic.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm a Roman Catholic. Do I have the right to a state with all other Roman Catholics? I mean, why would a religion have a right to a state?
Well, it doesn't. I mean, that's the point. The religions don't have a right to a state. I mean, the whole question here is about exceptionalizing the Jews and saying that they specifically have more rights to statehood than do other groups.
Yeah, I mean, I had an argument on Twitter the other day with a Chinese Jew who was making it plain that Judaism is not a religion, or rather that the Jews are not co-religionists. They are our people. Well, how can you be our people if A, you can be a Chinese Jew or an Ethiopian Jew, and B, you can convert to Judaism? I mean, Professor, I'm wearing a hat initially because a BBC producer savagely assaulted me in the street and scarred my head. He had converted to Judaism 6 weeks before. So if you can convert to Judaism, how can they be a people?
Well, of course, and also what they want to argue is that even atheist Jews are still Jews. So it's like saying all atheists are by definition some kind of religion because their parents might have had some religion. It's a completely ridiculous argument, but it's an argument which they've been making for a long time. They want to suggest that they're an ethnicity. And of course, even in UK law, they are recognised as being an ethnicity, along with Sikhs. No other religions are so recognised. So this is a wider issue, which actually points not just to the question of Zionism in the Levant and in occupied Palestine, but points to the role of Zionism and throughout the rest of the world, including, of course, in the UK, where the Zionists have a strong influence, as you were saying in your introduction there, talking about Conservative Friends of Israel and Labour Friends of Israel. They have a very strong influence on our politics, much stronger than is the case with almost any other either religion or ideology. So this is a real issue which we've only just begun to unpick and unpack. So when I say that I'm anti-Zionist and I explain some of my anti-Zionist views, there's actually a lot more to unpick and unpack about that, about the history of the Jews, about how they came to be seen in the way that they are seen, and how they came to make the case, like you've been saying, that they are a people, they're an ethnicity, not just a religion, or not a religion at all, even.
Indeed. Let's turn to the wider issue, because it's not necessary for anyone to agree with you or agree with me. The whole essence of academic freedom is that the students for whom the education is intended, of course, I mean, academics don't just exist in an ivory tower, they're supposed to teach people. And what, above all, they're supposed to teach people is how to think. And therefore, that's how the whole idea of tenure, of professors not being able to be dismissed, because that would be the road to the end of academic freedom. Your case was a particularly egregious example of that, wasn't it? Here was a university saying that although there are 100 schools of thought contending, only one of them has to be extirpated off the campus, sacked. This was an abuse of freedom, never mind an intervention in the issue of Zionism or anti-Zionism.
Well, yes, of course it was, and I would say something more about academic freedom. Yes, of course it's about freedom to test ideas and for students to be exposed to a range of ideas so that they're not mollycoddled all the way through university and don't come in touch with unpopular or views which are regarded as being unpopular in a particular country. So, socialism and Marxism, for example, on one side, and then the whole question of Zionism. But I think there's another reason why we have to have academic freedom. That is, of course, because academia, at its best, and science and social science produce knowledge about the world, and we can't run the world without having knowledge which is true and which is well researched and well evidenced. And the problem I had was that I'd done this research on the Zionist movement, and I started to talk about it and report it in writing and in speeches and in of course lectures. What was it that the university wanted me to do? Simply pretend that I hadn't found out the things that I had about Zionism? Well, that, of course, is the implication, like that we not only can students not be exposed to ideas, but researchers can't research things that they're interested in and are perfectly legitimate to research. So that I think is an even bigger, in a way, issue with the academic freedom, which the University of Bristol tried to squash under huge pressure from, of course, the Zionist movement.
Well, what kind of pressure was it? Who got involved, and how public was that pressure? Or was it behind the arras?
Well, there was a lot of behind-the-scenes pressure, which we have been able to document through the case, because, of course, most of this documentation was released to us. But, of course, it was also very, very public. I was attacked and complained about, and even me saying those words that I was attacked and complained about became part of the issue. I wasn't allowed to say I'd been attacked and complained about, because this was somehow a violation of the confidentiality in the university. What happened was the university investigated me with an external QC, and she gave me a completely clean bill of health, not a single thing I'd ever said, and there were many, many things I had said given to her in evidence. Not a single thing was anti-Semitic. And then the university while clearing me of all charges in the first round of this, then wouldn't tell anyone that I wasn't an anti-Semite. So I was left with the position of being attacked in the press as an anti-Semite and not being able to defend myself. So I said, look, I have been attacked and complained about. And the people who complained about me were not my students. They were not students in sociology. They were not students who I'd lectured to. They were students who were approached by the Union of Jewish Students, which was in turn approached by the Community Security Trust in order to create a complaint against me. So to do that, they had to find a student who was willing to take the complaint, and they found the president of the Bristol Jewish Society, a member of the Union of Jewish Students, which is itself a Zionist organisation. And the campaign against me thereafter snowballed and increased and was very, very public. It got to the stage where a whole laundry list of the Zionist organisations were threatening the university with legal action and with cases. And then, of course, we had the involvement of parliamentarians. More than 100 UK parliamentarians from the Houses of Commons and in the Lords signed a letter calling for me to be dismissed. Not a single one of those, of course, so far has come forward to apologise to me, and I'm waiting for those apologies.
Well, don't hold your breath. This horror, this canyon of horror that you've been through is, of course, rather familiar to our North American audience because this has been happening at all United States universities, notwithstanding the First Amendment protections that are supposed to exist there, and the laundry list of complainers will be familiar also. Do you think, especially after your victory, that they may correct their tactics at least, even if not change their minds? Because this doesn't look good. It's one thing being a bully, but when your bullying is adjudged to have been legally ill-founded, then it's a big setback for the Zionist movement, isn't it?
Well, it's a big setback for them because they will now not be able to have people sacked by the strategy of simply ringing up or writing to universities or any other workplace to have people sacked. There is a veritable cottage industry of Zionist groups who scour social media for the sayings of lawyers or doctors or accountants, anyone who has a professional regulatory body, and then they go to that regulatory body calling for them to be suspended or sacked, and many of them, of course, have been suspended or sacked. That will now not be possible. So that's an overreach by the Zionists. They're not going to scale back their ambitions, of course, but they will make this much, much more difficult for them. Nobody can be sacked for being an anti-Zionist. It will mean that some of the edge of their fire will be blunted, and they won't be able to be successful in the way that they have been. So that is the beginnings of us fighting back, defending not just academic freedom, but defending the right of everyone in employment in the UK and everyone in an employment relationship to be defended for their support for Palestine and for being anti-Zionist. So this is a tremendous step forward, and it will make it very difficult for the Zionists.
Well, if I had a job, I'd feel more secure in it now, because at least that line of attack would be closed off. What does it mean for other people in Britain now? I mean, can they rest easy, or, I mean, how, as it were, how ironclad is your victory? It is ironclad for you, but is it ironclad for another professor or another doctor? We both know general practitioners, hospital doctors, who've been suspended, who've lost their jobs for having politics similar to yours and mine.
Yeah. No, well, it will defend all of those people. I mean, everyone in any employment relationship will be defended. As you say, I wish I had a job as well, but it will mean that it's impossible for them to sack people. I'm already aware of several live cases which are actually hinging on this judgment coming out and it looks like in those cases that they will have a positive result as a direct result of this particular victory. This is a victory for everyone. Now, of course, let's remember that the university could still appeal this to the Supreme Court probably, and we'll find out in the next, I believe there's now about 18 days left for them to appeal. If they're going to do that, we'll find that out quite soon. But if it's not taken to the appeal court, then it will remain as a legal precedent, and nobody who goes to an employment tribunal will be found to have been problematic as a result of this judgment at the Employment Appeal Tribunal, because it affects all such proceedings.
Take them for millions, David. I know you've got to go. You've got another interview. Professor David Miller, the hero of the hour, being cheered right now by the whole international audience. We're very happy for you, but we're also very happy for all of us. It is a signal victory for the Palestinian cause. Professor Miller, thank you for joining us on the Mother of All Talk Shows. Let me take a quick break. Then it's your calls coming next. Stay tuned. Let's go to California, who wouldn't, where Josh is on the line on Trump's strategy. Go ahead, Josh.
You know, Trump has announced his intention to end forever wars. And when he says this, he means both the war on terror and the long-standing post-war bloc conflict that has given rise to all of these kind of pustular conflicts along the border of Russia and China, inclusive of the quote-unquote war on terror, the result of the resistance to the occupation. The transition from non-state actors to state actors, where it regards the resistance to the occupation of the Holy Land, and we can establish a denuclearization regime that has to come from the bottom up before it can come from the top down. There's absolutely no way to affect peace. And although the 67 borders is the prize, everyone has to learn how to play the game. And unfortunately, because we live in a world where everybody in every country is incidental as it relates to the conflict between the superpowers, the game is Trump's game, and the game is Putin's game, the game is Xi Jinping's game. So until people begin to play the game as it is, they're going to perpetuate a phase of the resistance to imperialism that is drawing to a close.
Well, I may be a visiting professor, Josh, but I'm not smart enough to understand the logic that you were arguing there. Much of it sounded like bollocks, I must tell you.
You are listening to the Mother of All Talk Shows with George Galloway.
$30,000 votes cast. Is criticizing Israel anti-Semitic? Yes or no? You can vote on my Telegram channel, t.me/George Galloway. You can vote on my X, on the YouTube community poll, on the YouTube stream. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you are in the advance card, the creme de la creme, you can vote on patreon.com/George Galloway. Remember, it's toll free to call the show in the United States and Canada, +1 855 MOATS, MOATS, or 855 50 287. It's free of charge in Britain and Ireland, 0800 229 4411, and the worldwide number 0044 203 966 2625. So, what did you think about Professor Miller's interview? What do you want me to ask Professor Sachs in the course of the show? He's on. Professor Sachs joins us at 8:20. Make sure you tell all your friends. Scott is the first caller from Dallas, Texas. Is Israel going the way of French Algeria? A very good question, actually, Scott. Go ahead and ask it.
Well, first, I get to upbraid you for you made a wrong statement. You said there's no Catholic country, but there's that brutal, oppressive Vatican City. They have no birth rate. And, it's just that maybe that makes me anti-papist. I don't know. Now,
I've no idea what you're talking about, but go on to what you wanted to talk about.
compare, the Jews having their own state to the Catholics. I mean, they do. It's the Vatican City. And the genocide of the Vaticanians is, it's just a horrible... story.
Now I've got you.
Yeah.
The Vatican is a city-state, and is the. But if I were to turn up and say, if an Italian were to visit the site of Hadrian's Wall and say, 2,000 years ago, this land was occupied by my ancestors, so I'm having it now. Clear off, leave your house, leave your land to me. The kind of response there would be. So the idea that people can invent a religious justification for what is effectively land theft, what is effectively piracy, brigandage, is discrediting to the religion itself. That's why the more orthodox Jews are horrified at the behavior of the Israeli state, because it reflects on their religion, and not very well. Go ahead, Scott. What's your Algerian point?
Well, I mean, and briefly, the Irish, I'm Irish, Scots-Irish American, but, we were settled by Phoenicia. The Irish have more Levantine heritage and claim than the Ashkenazi do. Ironically, there was no great influx that way. But anyway, I did marry an Algerian and got to go to Iran, and there's photos all over Algeria. I cannot find them easily on the internet, of the ports flooded with people carrying their cars on their shoulders. Over the weekend, the French abandoned Algeria, and they didn't see it coming. They never lost a battle. They never lost a fight. They just lost themselves. And I see Israel going that way. And I know
the Algerian liberation struggle at the time, of course, was described as terrorism, bombs in baby carriages. But as I think Ben Bella said, the French have their bombs on board the airplanes. If they will lend us some of their planes, we'll lend them some of our baby carriages. The heroic national liberation struggle led by the FLN and captured forever in Pontecorvo's epic film, The Battle of Algiers, is one of the most truly heroic freedom struggles of all time, which is why nobody knows anything about it nowadays. Only you through your wife, and me through my age and my long friendship with Ahmed Ben Bella, the leader of the FLN at that time. But nobody is taught about the freedom struggle in Algeria now, in which the Algerian people lost 1 million martyrs, 1 million, to be free of the French. And in the 1960s, in the time of the Beatles, the French were massacring Algerians on the streets of Paris, throwing them in the river Seine. Last word to you, Scott.
Let's see. I imagine you could find some of those photos, but they are hard to find on the internet. Maybe my French isn't good enough. It wasn't good enough to meet her, but just the ports, the people carrying their Volkswagen Beetles and the rugs and getting out. And that was over the weekend. They had arrangement for the utilities, and the country vacated. Iran is genius to not confront Israel directly. They're just going to isolate them. They're driving us out. They're going to split the GCC, and Israel's going to be alone. And their little Zionist state of hate's not going to be able to persist. Those people are going to leave, and maybe a real Israel. The Palestinians I know don't give a darn what it's called. They just want equal rights. Americans, we believe all people were born endowed by our Creator with equal rights, and the Zionists do not share that ideal. And so I guess it's just time for us to go our separate ways. The United States will endure. Israel will be gone.
Thank you very much, Scott in Dallas. Here's some comments. If you are watching on YouTube, just scan the QR code. You can leave comments for me. H.A. Mate Lot, Matalot, French for sailor, is criticizing Mexico anti-Catholic. Same question. Indeed. And the Cristo Balcarle says that 4% that voted yes must only be here in order to hate watch George Galloway. Indeed. Return of Meringues para sempre, what a wonderful name. Had to vote yes on is criticizing Israel anti-Semitic simply because of the comic value of the question. And Michael Crystal says Israel is to be criticized by all in all consciousness and in honor and benefit of humanity. And Naz says only a Zionist will say criticizing Israel is anti-Semitic. Casey is in Hawaii. We don't get many calls from Hawaii. So let's go to Casey to talk about Israel and Iran. On you go, Casey.
Thank you, George. It's an honor and a pleasure to talk to you this morning.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. 13 hours difference. I just want to make a quick comment about what's going on right now in Israel. I'm trying to connect the dots on who's what there and why is it going on. I think it's really, really suspicious that the United States can park all these KC-135 refueling planes on the Israel tarmac without a problem, and that the United States is now the one essentially taking on the attack of Iran, and Israel standing by. And I have one comment to make about that I have never heard anybody say. Maybe it's been said, but I'd love to hear your opinion and also Professor Sachs's opinion. I think the Israelis are now blackmailing the world about using a nuclear weapon if they're attacked. And now they have protected ground because they're blackmailing the world. I want your opinion.
Yeah, I think they are blackmailing the world. They're certainly blackmailing Donald Trump and everybody else connected to the Epstein affair. Blackmail is their middle name. It can be blackmail in the classical sense of the crime. It can be moral blackmail. It can be, as you say, nuclear blackmail. But blackmail is the name of their game, no doubt at all about that. But there's a problem for the world and for the Americans about nuclear attack on Iran. As I've discussed here many times before, the wind won't respect the borders of the neighboring countries, and any nuclear attack on Iran is a nuclear attack on the whole area, and that whole area is largely satrapies of the United States, of Great Britain and other colonialist countries. So it would be the end of Saudi Arabia if there's a nuclear attack on Iran. It would be the end of the Emirates, the end of Kuwait. It would be the end of Qatar. It would be the end of Bahrain. So it's difficult to organize a nuclear attack that inoculates everyone else that you don't want to poison with the radiation, burn in the blast, poison in the radiation, or starve in the nuclear winter. So there is a problem with the credibility of that nuclear blackmail, only if, like Samson, you were literally intending to bring down the entire house upon your head. In other words, to commit suicide also. But the inference in your question is one that I'm going to ask Professor Sachs about, which is that maybe this war is not over. Maybe this war is about to take a dramatic new turn, because the United States is still building up military assets in the region. And despite all logic dictating that they take this off-ramp, which appears now in the Iran-Oman talks to be visible, take it and get out of there. But maybe, just maybe, Trump's ego doesn't allow him to do that. We're all laughing at him, and maybe that's dangerous. Thank you very much, Casey, in Hawaii, for that. Now, a big word of appreciation for just some of tonight's top Moats supporters who backed the program through moats.tv. You go to the website, you find Donate Now, and press it. It's really very easy. But it isn't easy to donate generously, as have M.N. Big, Sergio Oliveira, Lynn Timperley, Patricia Williams, and Jacqueline Biggs. A big thanks to all of you, and especially those of you who are regular big donors to the show. You know who you are. If you want to support the show, keep it independent, keep it twice a week, well, go to moats.tv and press the Donate Now button. Nathan is in Seattle. He wants to talk about impeaching Trump. A good idea. Nathan, what say you?
I would disagree with the idea of impeaching Trump solving any of our issues. I think that's one of the master narratives, that Trump bad, Republicans bad. No, the whole system is bad. You know, people holding on to this idea that we get this one person out, like it won't be continuity of governance, like we're not completely run by blackmailed pedophiles. It's scary stuff. You know, a lot of it's all it is a narrative. That's why people like Mitch McConnell are coming out saying that he's going to show that he's not brain dead by debating you and showing you that you're brain dead. You know, like this is just a bunch of spectacle. I don't believe you're a coward for not debating Mitch McConnell. I think it's just like you're just not contributing to the big show. And I would like all American people out there to not participate in sharing these narratives. Our government is merging with our little brother Israel, and they're all treasonous. We need to figure out what to do with traitors to our country, and I don't think it's going to be not voting for them. We're going to have to step outside of the box.
Well, I do hear that from time to time, that you're not going to vote yourselves out of the mess that you are in, and that therefore we are in. But what's your alternative, Nathan? What should people do instead of voting their way out of it?
I think whatever person is in power, we need accountability. Whoever you vote in the office, you could vote your mom, your best friend in the office. Without a mechanism for holding them accountable for working for the people, we're just going to have what we have now, because they have accountability mechanisms already. That's your APACs, that's your blackmailed pedophilia rings and all that stuff. So it's like we need our politicians to be accountable to us. And it's just like it was a data center approved against the will of the people in Michigan, one of the cities in Michigan. The next day, they got rid of everyone in their city council. And it's harder for us, but we got a lot of people, and we are the ones who are perpetuating the system. We're the ones creating the robots, the AI, all of this stuff. Elon Musk, they get credit for it, but we are the ones building the prison that we are suffering from. So it's just like, stop participating. You know, stop, you know, all of the hateful stuff, you know, like we got all of this hate towards immigrants. It is, you know, that is upholstering their narrative that the bad people are these poor brown people who are actually holding up our economy. So it's just it's people getting creative, and I don't want to get into what that looks like. People who are stepping outside of the system, and just imagine if all the school shooters went to Davos. That I feel like that would be a good solution.
Well, we don't want that, of course, or to encourage school shooters to go to Davos, but I'd rather they were in Davos than in the schools of America killing little children. But that's pretty creative, probably overly creative, and my apologies to anybody at Davos who was offended by Nathan in Seattle. Let me take a quick break, because very soon, in 17 minutes to be precise, we'll have the great, the one and only Professor Jeffrey Sachs. Stay tuned. The legend Donna in Panama. Oh, Donna, we miss you.
Well, I miss you all too, and I wonder, is there anything that we might do that might help?
It's a beautiful thought, Donna, and characteristic of you to think of it. But my estimation is that I will be in what is self-imposed exile until after Starmer is gone. This was a political operation. The police were misused, as is now happening everywhere. My deputy leader of the Workers' Party of Britain, distinguished parliamentarian Chris Williamson, has been hunted out of his studio for his television program, Palestine Declassified. It's clear that a state and police operation is in preparation against him and that show. They want to close it down. And I cannot risk this show being closed down. He's risking it because he's broadcasting from England, from a studio in England. I am not. And ancient hatred of Russia is what lies beneath Starmer's hatred of the mother of all talk shows. So until the political situation changes, we will continue to live in exile. It's no hardship, to be honest. Where we are living is far, I'm sorry to say, far more prosperous than our own country is, and the weather is a lot better too. So I'm not asking for anyone's sympathy, but I'm not going to place myself in an arrestable situation again. I think you know, Donna, the toll it took on my health to be confronted by armed police officers and be told I was being held under the Terrorism Act. Me, under the Terrorism Act.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
This is a very big poll. Is criticizing Israel anti-Semitic, yes or no? The results are overwhelming, but the quantum is what counts now. If we can get a poll saying 35, 40,000 votes overwhelmingly rejecting the idea that criticizing Israel is anti-Semitic, well, that would be an achievement. Lewis is in England, in Northampton. He wants to talk about little Nigel Farage. I'd forgotten about him, Lewis. Haven't heard of him for a long time.
Hi, George. How are you doing this evening?
All good, thank you very much.
Firstly, it's a pleasure to talk to you because I think you're actually quite a good man. I've been watching your stream last couple of months, and I get where you're coming from.
Thank you.
And I mean that as well. And Nigel, I mean, to apologies, do you like Nigel? Do you not like?
No,
So,
I'm not hearing you very well, but you've got a point of view on Nigel Farage. Give me yours, I'll give you mine.
okie dokie. So, George, my perspective, my opinion on Mr. Farage, I'm concerned, highly concerned. I'm not too sure where we're going to go with this chappie. And, let's be bluntly honest here, guys. When we left the EU, it was head provoked, not heart provoked, And there was one, I don't know if you know, guys, years ago, when the Sun was the Sun, the newspaper was the newspaper, on the front page, Nigel Farage walked away from a crumpled tin can. Right, there was an awful situation, a plane crash. He walked across a couple of farmers' fields, right, and he bowled into a pub, and when he left, he gained 20 votes. So this man obviously has something, he's doing something correct, no? George?
No, I mean, Adolf Hitler got a lot of votes. Just because you get votes doesn't mean you're doing something correct. It can mean that you're just a very plausible liar, which was true of Adolf Hitler and is true of Nigel Farage. He's a plausible liar that our problems are the fault of people with coloured faces. That the problem with British society, the British economy, the disappearance of British prosperity, the disappearance of respect for Britain in the world is the fault of people with brown or black faces, and it is not. But I'll grant you he's a plausible salesman of that idea, just as Goebbels and Hitler were plausible salesmen of the scapegoating of Jewish people and of Roma people, Gypsy people, and the other scapegoats that the Goebbelian hate parade favoured singling out on any particular day. Obviously, it became the Holocaust. I'm not accusing Nigel Farage of wishing a Holocaust on anyone, but when he was at the private school, Dulwich College, according to his teachers and fellow students at the time, he was rather insouciant about what happened in that Holocaust at the time. Now, that was when he was a child. When he was a man, I presume he put away childish things. I know him very well. Of course, I worked with him in the Brexit campaign. We were both Brexit campaigners. I don't dislike him personally. He's good company and plausible. But he's selling a lie. He's selling a lie, and that leads him into alliance with some of the worst people in the world. It also leads him to zig and zag according to his own apparently insatiable love of money. I have no idea what he has done with all of the money that he has acquired. But we now know that it is millions and millions and millions. In his case, in one donation, £5 million in one donation, that he has been distinctly shady about the provenance and the purpose of that donation. Indeed, we wouldn't even have known about £5 million donation if he hadn't been elected to Parliament and if the parliamentary authorities hadn't stumbled upon it. He then blamed Vladimir Putin. He blamed the Russians for hacking his phone and divulging the existence of this £5 million. Well, the crime is the £5 million, Nigel, not the newspaper or the authority which got hold of what is true information. But he tried to blame the Russians. Why? Because he knows that the political elite in Britain will sympathize with anything that is thought to be harmful to Russia. So truth, honesty are passing strangers to Nigel Farage. They also require him to go with the prevailing wind in a way that he doesn't do on other things. So, for example, Nigel is now a big supporter of Ukraine and the continuation of the Ukraine war, whereas once he was an opponent of it. Nigel is now a big supporter of Israel, which, to say the least, he was not before. So this kind of unprincipled opportunism, zigging and zagging according to your own financial or political or personal interests, is a deeply discreditable question mark over the character of Nigel Farage. Lewis, only fair I give you the last word. Please, whatever you've got to say.
So, George, apologies, I've been listening, but firstly, may I say, George, I actually quite like you. Your message comes across quite well. But you have bits and bobs that don't... Sometimes they're, not subliminal messages, but they can be gauged by people in an incorrect way, all right? But I actually quite like you. Please excuse my terminology. You're not racist. You're not biased. You're nothing nasty. But you have opinions, and you can be correct on multiple occasions. But also, there are things I don't agree with. But the majority of things you say are actually on point. When it comes to Mr. Farage, are we not concerned? Are we not concerned about what would possibly happen? And the English constituency, the people within this country. Okay, I lived abroad on multiple. I was blessed. My father was a managing director abroad, so I understand how other countries work and operate. We are blessed to live in this country, but at the moment it's a very, very messy situation. How do we come back from that? I don't think we can.
The whole country is going down the drain, so you're understating it when you say it's a messy situation. The economy is going down the drain. The society is going down the drain. Coastal and rural communities are going down the drain. The inner city and the urban population are trapped in lives that are going down the drain. People can't afford to live. People can't afford housing. People in their 40s are still living at home with their elderly parents because they cannot get a house. They cannot get on the housing ladder. So Britain is in a big mess. And all I'm saying is Nigel Farage does not have the answer to that. Worse, he's peddling a false answer to that, one which can profoundly divide and even dangerously divide our society. And I don't want that to happen. I don't live in Britain anymore. But of course I remain British. And even if they took my passport away, I would still remain British, British and Irish, perhaps. But I care about what happens to the people in Britain, very much indeed. So I not only don't wish harm on Britain, quite the opposite. I'm shouting myself hoarse with the denunciation of the bad things that our country is doing and offering alternatives. Thank you, Lewis, in Northampton, in England, for the kind things that you said and the challenging points that you made. Now, the podcast, my pride and joy. You can download the Moats podcast right now by scanning the QR code on the corner of your screen. You can also listen to the podcast when you visit moats.tv, as I know you're going to, because you would never listen to a busker in the street for 2 hours and then walk away without putting something in his hat? Well, my hat, metaphorically, is at moats.tv. I need £1 or €1 or $1 from you, at least. Look on it as less than the price of a cup of tea in an insalubrious cafe, as I used to say. Now, this week, the podcast is in the top 10 for politics in Bulgaria, Morocco, and Senegal, and in the top 30 for politics in Kuwait, the UAE, Croatia, and Malaysia. Very proud about that. Big thanks to all of you. Let's go to Florida. Who wouldn't? Where Maurice is in Orlando commenting on the poll. Maurice, welcome.
Hello, George. Well, my comment is not criticizing Israel is anti-Semitic, especially since Semites have been slaughtered for over 80 years and the so-called Israelis are European colonizers. Back to you.
I think that's semantic, but true. Not Semitic, semantic. The semantics of it are clear. It's the Palestinians who are the Semites, and the Ashkenazi late converts to Judaism from Eastern Europe who are not Semitic. So hating them would not be anti-Semitic. Hating Palestinians is anti-Semitic. But it's semantic in this regard. Anti-Semitism is hatred of Jews. And anti-Semitism, hatred of Jews, exists. I've met some who hate Jews. I have seen the handiwork of people who hate Jews. I saw it in the carnage of the Holocaust. Hating Jews is a potentially murderous, genocidal impulse. And so I struggle against it. And I've known a lot of Jews. I've known them up close and personal, or I've known them as influence and role models for me. Everybody knows I'm always quoting Bob Dylan. Everybody knows I'm always quoting Dr. Karl Marx and Professor Einstein. Everybody knows my feelings about Professor Norman Finkelstein, Professor Ilan Pappé, and so many others. Everybody knows, if they've seen my answer at the Oxford Union to the question, Mr. Galloway, are you a racist? How closely I worked with Jews in South Africa during the apartheid system. I've also known and been very close to Israeli Jews who mostly have left Israel now, can no longer operate there. The craziness, the insanity of that society, or even just to preserve their lives. And so I'm not anti-Semitic for obvious reasons. Anybody who knows my politics must know that I could not possibly be anti-Semitic. So I tend to reject the semantic point that the Israelis are not actually Semites to begin with, for those reasons. Let me take a quick break, because right after it, it's the one and only Jeffrey Sachs. Stay tuned. His approval ratings are in the toilet. He won a huge mandate, well less than a year ago, and he's thrown it all away. He has an approval rating of just under 40% now, and a disapproval rating of all the others. There are no don't knows in the issue of Donald Trump. And so he has maximized the number of people who hate him or dislike him, and he has systematically undermined the voting base that formerly liked him. And I don't know whether that is because of his donors, because he's intellectually challenged, because it's of his age. I really don't know.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Now, to describe Professor Sachs as the professor of economics at Columbia University and the UN policy advisor is a bit like describing Cristiano Ronaldo, as a footballer. Cristiano Ronaldo is the greatest footballer of all time, and Professor Jeffrey Sachs is the greatest professor of all time, and I'm very glad that he joins us now. Professor, your country is, alas, in deep trouble, and I wanted to go through that with you. I said in my monologue that having been afraid of America for most of my life, having been angry at America for pretty much all of my life, I now find myself laughing at America, laughing at the state that it's in, the leadership that it has, the muddle that the whole of politics in DC seems to have become, and praying for your people and a change of direction, praying for the new political force, perhaps founded by our good friend Tucker Carlson and his friends just the other day. I'm both worried and I'm mocking America. That can't be a good thing for you as a loyal American.
Well, it's a pretty sad scene. Mockery would be okay if it weren't for all the tragedies that the United States is causing. So, unfortunately, we need to be more concerned. The U.S. government, not the people, but the United States government has become a force for ill in the world in countless ways. Every major war has the United States as the main cause behind it. The war in Iran, obviously, is a war of U.S. aggression. The war in Gaza is a war of U.S. complicity and genocide. And the war in Ukraine, though it's unfortunately not obvious to many people, is a war that was provoked by the United States, by a plan dating back to the 1990s to weaken Russia, to encircle Russia by expanding NATO around the Black Sea and surrounding Russia, a kind of Crimean War version 2, 160 years after the first Crimean War. So the U.S. is making a mess in the world. Donald Trump is, of course, utterly corrupt and utterly incompetent. But George, the sad fact is our last 6 presidents have been ranging from utter mediocrities to absolutely terrible. Every one of them has gotten us into unnecessary wars. The U.S. deep state, meaning the security apparatus, the CIA, the military-industrial complex, now Silicon Valley, which is up to its neck in Pentagon contracts and AI battlefield planning and so forth. All of this is beyond the normal politics. The system runs almost no matter who's president. It happens that Trump is the most incompetent, the most vile of them, but I have to tell you, I've been saying that of each president, that it couldn't get worse, and that it keeps getting worse.
Yes, and of course that could continue. You've definitely had back-to-back amongst the worst and, dare I say again, the most ridiculous presidents. I doubt if you've ever had a back-to-back just like this one, where a mentally incompetent and clearly geriatric and ill president is succeeded by another who seems rapidly to be getting into the same state, and both had their finger on the trigger. But what I suppose I'm saying, I'm so old I remember the Vietnam War as if it was yesterday. And although it finished just
I do too.
weeks before I was born, I remember the Korean War. And so what I'm thinking is that the US has gotten into all these wars, but it hasn't won any of them. And it hasn't prevailed in any of them. North Korea is the Economist's economic pick of the year. Its economy outperformed every other economy, according to the Economist. Vietnam is, trust me on this, an absolute delight of a country, despite the efforts that were made to destroy it. And right up to Iran. Iran is now more powerful, more united than I think it has ever been. And so all these wars, all these crimes that the US keeps committing, they actually backfire. They leave America weaker, more hated and isolated than before.
There are two basic problems that have led to this dire state of the U.S. The first actually dates back almost 80 years now to the end of World War II. In 1947, the National Security Act established the CIA as a kind of private and unaccountable army of the President of the United States, a military force that could overthrow governments, that could do nefarious deeds, and that basically got out of control even of the presidents themselves. And because the CIA operates with deniability, I won't say it operates secretly because we can see its fingerprints everywhere, but it operates with deniability. There is basically no accountability. And that means that the security state has come to determine American policy, even when the American people are against these wars. They are for Palestinian rights. They are not interested in pursuing a war against Russia. They are steadfastly against the war in Iran. But it doesn't matter. This is not representative democracy where public opinion is the driver. The second thing that has gone horribly wrong with American politics is the financial corruption. Basically, starting in the 1970s, every limit on campaign spending, on the ability of rich people and lobbies and corporations to fund and buy the government have been eliminated. The Supreme Court played a terrible, deliberate role in that, saying, what could go wrong? Corporate money is just free speech, they declared in case after case. Something tragic and absurd, foolish on its face, disastrous in its consequence. So the United States government has become a corrupt morass where a great proportion of the Congress is funded by the military, industrial, digital complex, as I call it, because Silicon Valley is a core part of this now. Companies like SpaceX or Google or Palantir are riding on huge Pentagon budgets. They are warmongers because they're testing their weapons, they're developing their battlefield AI, they're doing all sorts of horrible things, but they are calling the shots. So between the security state, which already President Eisenhower warned us about in his farewell address 65 years ago in 1961, he told us we are falling under the control of the military-industrial complex and the corruption of American politics. Our system has become utterly degraded. What happened, George, in addition to all of this, was a really dangerous, nutty mindset. Despite the Vietnam War, despite all these losses and disasters that the CIA created, all of the instability in the civil wars, when the Soviet Union ended in December 1991, the American officials, especially the security state officials, got into their head that the United States now runs the show. It has military bases in 80 countries, roughly 750 overseas bases. CIA operates all over the world. Soviet Union's gone. Russia's weak. They decided we run the show. They called it the unipolar moment. They called the U.S. The global hegemon. They said the U.S. has indisputable primacy. And it was all a delusion, even back 35 years ago, but with the rise of China, with the recovery of Russia after the collapse of the Soviet Union and the financial crises of that period, the United States is hardly the sole superpower, but it acts like it is, believes that it is, reads its own headlines. And so it's really all three factors that are at play: a security state that is unaccountable, a corrupt political system heavily funded by the security state, and a belief in one's own press reviews, which is nonstop narrative and propaganda spun by the mainstream media that the United States somehow runs the show. What's so incredibly disappointing in all of this is that seemingly sane people, leaders in Europe, don't stand up and say, my God, this is a shit show. Stop this. They say, oh, no, we must deal with the United States. Donald Trump is daddy, in the words of the Secretary General of NATO, no less. These politicians are so desperate to please Donald Trump, an old, very confused, never bright individual that sits on the top of this heap, doing absolutely crazy and illegal and dangerous things, like a completely, totally crazy and unnecessary war of aggression against Iran that these fools thought was going to last one day, because Donald Trump told us the next day after launching the war, I'll pick the next leader, after they had assassinated the supreme leader of Iran. Here we are, months later. They've hardly picked the new leader. They've just set the world economy into a disastrous tailspin. Nothing has worked the way that Trump has said it would. This is not a surprise. The man is not exactly clever. And here we are in a deepening disaster. You mentioned that his approval rating is under 40%. It's probably closer to 30% at this point, something like 32% approve, something like 60 plus 62, 63% disapprove, and a few percentage points have no particular opinion. But the fact of the matter is, the American people are much better than our government. Most of us are just shaking our head, wondering how a country that had ostensibly a representative democracy has let that representative government slip out of its fingers, and now we just pay the bills or back up the debt of a military state that is in a tantrum and in a rampage. Maybe that's the last point I would mention, which is, the U.S. Thought itself the sole superpower, the country that would run the world. It has proven to be otherwise, and the American reaction, or let's say the Washington reaction or the deep state reaction, is not a sober reconsideration, but rather a growing temper tantrum. We're just having a kind of breakdown. Let's bomb this one. Let's overthrow this one. Let's kidnap the president of this one. Let's show our macho credentials. It's a kind of tantrum that leads nowhere other than to an accelerated decline. But that's the sad reality. So yes, it's worthy of mockery, but the sad part is it's no joke. It's just a growing disaster for a lot of people, for the Palestinians, for the Ukrainians, for the Iranians.
Yeah. A lot of people are paying a very high price for this degeneration. I'm actually the great-grandson of the only woman in the 19th century who emigrated from New York to Dundee in Scotland, else I wouldn't be sitting here. So I have American blood in my veins, and it pains me to see the state you're in. It is ironic, isn't it, that the Republicans now seem to be falling back on the 1950s McCarthyite idea that America is somehow threatened by communism, and socialism is on the lips of all of Trump's entourage, but only as a swear word. And yet these very industries that you are talking about, the Silicon Valley, the military-industrial complex, these are all public expenditure junkies. These are all beneficiaries of state benefaction. They ought to be grateful to the American taxpayer, who's paid a pretty penny for their private profits.
Well, look, Elon Musk spent several $100 million to get Trump elected, and has made several tens or hundreds of billions of dollars in return for his quote-unquote political investment. This is a game that is absolutely vulgar and disastrous. I don't think these words mean much anymore, George, not in substance, but not even in resonance. Maybe to, a few of Trump's elderly supporters, they may remember who McCarthy is. They may feel that sudden excitement when the word communism is spoken. But for young people in America, this is all meaningless. And so when Trump started about the communist scare a few weeks ago, as part of his fall campaign, all you could say is not, how nasty and cynical, but how incredibly irrelevant and tone deaf this is. No one cares. This doesn't resonate. We are not actually in 1953. We're in 2026. And these words just don't have that emotional frisson that maybe for Donald Trump in his 80th year, they somehow still do. Remember, his guru, a very, very nasty man named Roy Cohen, was the lawyer for the McCarthy hearings, and maybe Trump feels some special attraction to all of that pathology that was Joseph McCarthy. But for young people today, my God, they're wondering, why is this country falling apart? Support of young people for Donald Trump is vanishingly small. His base, which is disappearing in any event, is some older people, and it used to be working class, but they've lost heart also. All Donald Trump has done is cut taxes for the rich, raised inflation by putting on tariffs that he had no power to do. The joke is he collected maybe $150 billion from consumers in these tariffs. Then the Supreme Court declared the tariffs to be unconstitutional, illegal, but the money's going back to the companies, not to the consumers. So the whole thing is being viewed by the American people as, what the hell is all of this about? And then this war in Iran, which, so totally vulgarly violated every statement that Trump made in the 2024 campaign about getting America out of these endless wars and all the heavy costs. And we can all see that Bibi Netanyahu showed up one day with this idiot head of Mossad, Barnea, and sweet-talked Trump into about the stupidest thing imaginable. And then Trump bragged, hey, I'm the one that did it. The other 6 presidents before me were afraid to do it. Yeah, they had even, a slight sliver of common sense that this one lacks. So the base is gone. There is no base right now. But unfortunately, as I said, public opinion does not drive policy. Maybe we'll have an election in which the votes are actually counted, in which the gerrymandering doesn't destroy representation. If we do in November, Trump will lose at least the lower house, the House of Representatives. It'll mean the end of his presidency, other than the continuing attempt to rule by basically illegal and unconstitutional executive decrees. We're in a mess. The mess is going to last for a while longer.
Well, as a famous Russian said, Professor, what is to be done? Now, just swapping the man in the red tie for the man in the blue tie obviously isn't working. 2 cheeks of the same ass, and the ass is hanging down below the knees now. It is no longer an ass that can be presented to the people, to the world. So something new, somebody new. Now, my eye was caught by Tucker Carlson's 10-point program and the people that he has assembled, Taylor Greene, Thomas Massey, Kent, and so on. There's quite a few that I know that are regulars on this show that should be added to that. And I'm sure that Tucker will take a Catholic view to who's involved in this third force. But does that particular third force have any legs as you see it?
Well, it represents the American public opinion. So it's very important. These are all politicians, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massey. Tucker's not a politician, just a very smart, decent observer and commentator. But these are all people who have told the truth. The basic truth that the United States has become a war machine. That's its main purpose of governance. cut taxes for the rich, cater to Silicon Valley so that we can make autonomous weapons and AI battlefield systems and continue our perpetual wars. And this group is saying no. And these are the politicians among them were saying no within Trump's party. And that wasn't simple to do. They lost their job in essence because Trump, was able to push them aside. But they're saying, no, we're not going to be pushed aside. We are the voice, actually, of the American people. So I think that it's a significant development. Whether it turns out to be the specific political breakthrough, I don't know. But I think it reflects the fact that the American people are not going quietly into this. They're saying we want our government back. We want peace. We're sick of perpetual wars. We'd actually like to be able to have a decent job and afford our housing and our health care costs. No doubt in American politics, the number one issue is so-called affordability. But what that really translates into is that the number one issue for actual Americans day by day is that the economy has become insanely unequal. You have 10 people or so who have a combined net worth of about $2.5 trillion, starting with Elon Musk, but then the heads of Silicon Big Tech all on their Pentagon budgets and pumped up by these wars. And then you have the vast majority of Americans who are just finding it actually hard, just to go on day by day or month by month. God forbid they need a medical procedure or a new drug that they can't afford. And then they find themselves in real trouble. So the system's a mess, and none of these presidents since, oh my God, actually going back to the 1970s, has done anything real about the rising inequalities in America. They all learned cut taxes for the rich so they fund your campaign. That became the basic instinct of politicians of both parties in an increasingly corrupt political system. So you ask me, is this movement significant? It is. It's significant not because they're trying to teach the American people something different, but they're trying to express the real views of Americans who are not being heard at all or represented at all in our current politics. And this is, where the likes of a Donald Trump come in. He came in with a bunch of bullshit, obviously, but he said, I hear you. I hear you're suffering. We're not going to have more of these wars. They're wasteful. And then he went on, of course, it's people with dark skins who have come in to take your jobs, and it's the Chinese. And so everything was against. He doesn't understand anyway. He's a nasty man. But nothing that he put on offer could really address the hurt of an economy that isn't serving the average person anymore. And he had no intention of doing it because his main goal is to enrich himself and his family and to hold on to power and to be in the news every 5 minutes. But the American people are saying, no, we really want something else. And I don't think it's over yet. But by the way that American politics has worked is that once in a while, we've had a good or even a great leader who has reset the course. The greatest president, in my view, in American history was Franklin Roosevelt. And he had to reset a disastrous course. John Kennedy would have been the next greatest had he been allowed by the security state to live. because he was on a path of peacemaking that was unparalleled in modern times. I'm pretty convinced they did him in as a result of that. It's not fully proved, but I think that's the overwhelming evidence. And since then, we've not really had a president who could turn the corner, who had the intentions, the smarts, the capacity. You need, at this point, a kind of political genius. They arise once in a while. Different countries get them at different times. China got its Deng Xiaoping. He set China on a path to achieve all that China's done. We could have someone like that. I don't know who it's going to be, to tell you the truth, but this is actually our best hope.
I wish it was you, Professor. And unlike Donald Trump, of course, Jack Kennedy did not dodge the military. Jack Kennedy fought in the Second World War very heroically, risked his life, almost lost his life. His brother did lose his life. And of course, both Jack and Bobby then lost theirs for standing against wars. It's always a pleasure. It's an honor to have you on our show, Professor. Thank you for joining us on the Mother of All Talk Shows.
George, I love to be with you. I love to be with you. I love what you stand for, and anytime.
God bless you. Thank you so much. Professor Jeffrey Sachs, Professor of Economics at Columbia University and a United Nations Policy Advisor. Let's take a couple of quick calls before Gayatri. It's Guy in Newcastle. I presume Newcastle in England, Newcastle upon Tyne. Guy, go ahead.
No, hi George. No, Newcastle under Lyme in Staffordshire.
There you go. I was nearly right. Go ahead.
You were nearly right. Yeah. I've been doing some map reading since I've been listening to your show this evening. Now, Tehran is in the region of 1,200 miles away from Riyadh and similar mileage to Dubai. Now, I'm not an expert on I'm not an expert on weapons, but I believe a nuclear bomb has got a fireball, a blast, and a pressure wave, which will incinerate millions of people instantly. But it travels in the region of tens of miles, not thousands of miles. So I'm not sure. And if you were going to use a nuclear weapon, wouldn't they bomb the capital in order to destroy the command structure of the country? And if a nuclear weapon,
they would. They would, but first of all, the blast affects much more than 10 miles. I think you're thinking of the bombs that hit Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But today's nuclear bombs are 1,000 times more powerful than the bombs that devastated and ultimately killed 250,000 people in Hiroshima around about this time of the year in 1945. But then, of course, after the blast comes the radiation, and the radiation blows in the wind. There were sheep dying on Welsh hillsides from the radiation of a nuclear leak at Chernobyl all the way in Ukraine just a few decades ago. Carry on, Guy.
Yeah, and my question would now be, if someone did decide to use a nuclear weapon on Iran, what would the likes of China and Russia do? What would they respond, or what do you think would occur then?
No, I don't think that they would respond. I think they would consider it a war crime of epic proportions. It would change the world forever in all kinds of ways. The aggressor, America or Israel, or both in your hypothetical, would be damned forever for having committed this crime, which would, as you say, incinerate millions of people. But the first thing that would happen is that everybody would get a nuclear weapon. Everybody. Because once the world had seen, again, this time in color, the impact of nuclear weapons on Iran, in your hypothesis, everyone would realize that nuclear proliferation was not just inevitable, but was vital, a vital necessity. Relations would end between Russia and China and the United States. They would end between Russia and China and Israel. It's difficult to calculate just how the world would change if millions of Iranians were incinerated in your nuclear hypothesis. Thanks, Guy. I've got to press on because I've got Gayatri coming up and there's a legend on the line. Terence in Reading on international law. Terence, welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Galloway. Same as usual. I hope you and yours are very well. Well, my points tonight are for your consideration. The first one, international law, we'll go down to employment law, which links in lovely. International law is non-existent as far as I'm concerned. When you've got a statue being put up in Uganda for Milikowski, or what's his name, the leader of Israel, apparently his brother Netanyahu, they've now got a statue about the Entebbe raid, where the great Idi Amin at that time said, you release Palestinian hostages and we'll allow you to come in. You look at the plane. And you go then to Argentina, that's controlled by another Milikowski, debt to the Zionists in America, that word against Zionists. How dare that Scotsman have an opinion just like you? Yeah, and myself included, I must admit. It was nice to hear a Scotsman saying the same thing. You can't protect things that are true, and a Zionist is true, and long may it be this. And we can see that come into employment law now. And you've got Dr. Miller.
Absolutely correct, Terence. I've got a clip on my phone of Elon Musk predicting when that Milikowski took over in Argentina. He predicted great prosperity is coming for the Argentine people. The peso, the Argentine peso, collapsed today with a value of 0 on the international money markets. Argentina is totally and completely bankrupted and ruined by that Milikowski. The other one is doing his best to destroy the world. Sorry to hurry you on, Tel, because I think I have to thank another group of tonight's most supporters: Raul G., L. Findlay, Gerald O'Keefe, Anita Trejo, 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 thanks Anita, and Daniel Hamilton. We need all of your help. Now, breaking news in the last few minutes on YouTube. Mike Galasso has just donated $500 via Super Chat. Thank you, Mike. Fantastically generous. Very, very kind of you. There's a legend. It's a Robos in New York who is on, I hope, a proper line. Robos, welcome back.
Salubrious salutations. I can see we are pressed up against it in earnest. I don't know how the line is. I'm on 9th Avenue and 51st Street in New York City. So I have no idea what it sounds like from your end, but I'm thankful to the donors, as a segue, as always, for making it possible for the likes of me to speak to thee and the Dine Moats international family and audience. Much blessings to the clan Galloway, as always. I'm just going to get right to it, and of course, power to Gayatri and the staff. I wanted to share a very quick, ardent perspective on this NATO Article 5 Middle East version. It's like a shit soup with a side of a turd sandwich. You know, it's the ink hasn't even fully dried on the $10 billion deal between Pakistan and Iran, whereas Iran has finished their side of the pipeline, but Pakistan needs the United Snakes of America's permission to finish their side. They're still doing economic everything, and then they go and do this madness. So I think it's a fake out. It's a 52 fake out. Yemen has said they're not respecting any coalition. You know, they can, you know, like women who have abortions, they're not having it. They said all the countries could combine. They're not going to stop doing blockade for blockade. And Iran, you know, they're going to keep doing what they have to do to attain justice. So I haven't heard too many people articulating about it. I don't know if it's not worth the time of anyone, but that's not going to go anywhere. But I think it's also orchestration by the United Snakes to sort of do a division of labor, right? Create this fake NATO 5, Article 5 thing, and hopefully, you know, it will bring some fake peace in the region. But it's not going to work, and it's just going to create even more problems. And with that, I'm looking forward to Gayatri the Gracious Galloway, Lady G, first of her name. Thank you, Moats.
Well, thank you. I mean, talk about powerful and succinct. From 9th Avenue, I think he said he was, in the street, probably in a phone booth. That kind of wisdom is what makes a robot such an important contributor to the mother of all talk shows. I think this new alliance, Gayatri was talking to me about it just today, actually, is significant in a couple of regards. First of all, it's a sign that Saudi Arabia no longer trusts the United States to defend it. It's a sign that Pakistan needs more Saudi money. But if you ask me, the main purpose of the Pakistani army is to repress the Pakistani people and to arrest the leaders of the Pakistani people and throw them into wicked, evil dungeons and keep them there until they are broken or dead, as they are doing to Imran Khan, the rightful Prime Minister, and as they have done to the late and great Benazir Bhutto and her father, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, before him, and many, many others. The Turkish armed forces are, of course, formidable. It's a pity that the formidable Turkish armed forces were not used or even threatened to be used to support their co-religionists, not just co-religionists, but their current Sunni Muslims in Gaza were at no stage ever likely to receive the military support of Turkey. But Turkey is ready to come to the defense of Saudi Arabia. I've got no problem with coming to the defense of Saudi Arabia. I don't want Saudi Arabia to be attacked, but the best way for Saudi Arabia not to be attacked is for Saudi Arabia to stop attacking other people, principally the people of Yemen. If the United Arab Emirates would stop attacking the people of Sudan by proxy, the security of the United Arab Emirates would be commensurately improved. If Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and Bahrain did not allow America to attack Iran from their soil, air, water, then Iran would feel a whole lot better about them, if you get my drift. So I'm not against this alliance. I would like all of the Muslim countries of the world to have a Muslim NATO, to agree to defend each other against any attack from anyone else. I'd be in favor of that. But if this is a small step towards that, then I would welcome it. But as the Saudi leaders will know, There's an old Bedouin tale. Trust in God, but tie up your camel at night. And with that company, Turkey and Pakistan, I'd urge the Saudi leaders to trust in God, but tie up their camel just in case. Well, now here's the news. No, let me start that again. Now here's the woman without whom the news wouldn't be the news. Here's Gayatri. What's rattling, Gayatri?
Well, Professor Miller is not the only academic who has proven to be right when it comes to standing by Palestine. This week, the University of Minnesota paid a $250,000 settlement to historian Ras Siegel. 2 years ago, the university hired Mr. Siegel, who is an Israeli-American, to lead the university's Center for Holocaust and Genocidal Studies. But then it rescinded it because of pressure from its donors who objected this appointment because Mr. Siegel said that Israel's military actions in Gaza is genocide. In fact, he states that their post-October 7 assaults are a textbook case for genocide. Criticizing Israel is not anti-Semitic. But by weaponizing anti-Semitism, Mr. Siegel says, it puts Jewish people in danger because it feeds into the conflation of people and state. So, upon his victory, he said, this settlement represents a successful refusal to accept the world of lies that blur an ongoing genocide and a commitment to continue the intertwined struggles for truth, justice, and accountability in Palestine and on our campuses. Now, the University of Minnesota agreed to pay, but it does not mean that they admit wrongdoing. Also this week, Burger King hired its employee after she stated Free Palestine to a customer who revealed his Star of David necklace and said that he was from Israel. So, the customer then went outside filming himself, explaining what happened, and questions whether Burger King is a safe space for Jewish customers. Now, when the soldiers of social media learned about this counter-interaction and that Ariana Hamilton was fired because of standing by Palestine, they did their job, the clip went viral, and they all led to her fundraiser page. And on this GoFundMe page, she describes that she's reaching out to cover basic needs, other living expenses, while I continue searching for work. It will also help me support my family and continue working toward my goal of going to college. If I am fortunate enough to receive more support than I need for these expenses, I plan to donate a portion for families in Palestine. Well, Ariana's online fundraiser went beyond her wildest imagination. It is currently, and I say currently because it goes up at a very rapid pace, at $229,697 US. So almost the same as Ras Siegel from the University of Minnesota. So congratulations, Professor Miller and Mr. Siegel and Ariana for standing firm by Palestine and against oppression and injustice.
How simply marvelous. What a great set of stories to end on. Mr. Siegel, I'd have put a 0 on that figure, to be honest. If I was him, you wouldn't have got me to drop any court action without that extra 0. 2,500,000 is what that case is worth. And David Miller's case also. Yeah. I've been calculating the loss of earnings, loss of reputation, the media frenzy, feeding frenzy that David Miller suffered, the wear and tear on his life, his psyche, which can never be properly quantified, but definitely I'd be looking at £2 million. So if I was representing him, I'd be saying to the Bristol authorities, either you give our client his job back, or you give him now a cheque for £2,500,000. And then David could form his own institute and be a professor in that. As for Ariana, this young girl working behind the counter at Burger King, which has been, like me, flame grilling since 1954, was earning a pittance, as workers in that industry inevitably do. She has now raised from public generosity, from the people that might be their customers, 10 years or more of the wages that she would have earned at Burger King, which tells you everything you need to know about the generosity of the public, about the pathetic level of wages being paid to Burger King employees, but it's also another major boomerang thrown by the Zionist lobby at what they thought was an easy victim, a boomerang which has come back to hit them. Gayatri, we are so further than we've ever been beyond time.
Sorry.
I better quickly wish everyone a good night. Thank everyone for joining us. Thanks everyone who's donated at moats.tv or on the super chat. But every one of you, before you go to bed now tonight, must go to moats.tv and leave a donation, even if it's £1, $1, or €1. We'll be back. I've no idea whether this is Wednesday or Sunday, but we'll be back on Wednesday or Sunday, whichever one it is.
It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.